We've already seen why using punctuation marks is so important when we write or even when we read anything. Now let's take a look at one of the most basic punctuation marks in the English language, the full stop. In certain parts of the world, we also call it the period. Now, where do we use the full stop? We use the full stop at the end of a sentence which is a statement, a declarative or an imperative statement. So, declarative sentences or statements are basically anything that states a fact or some information. Let's take a look at an example. If I have the sentence, I live here, this is a declarative sentence or a declarative statement. And I have placed the full stop or the period at the end of the statement to show that it is a complete sentence. So full stops basically signify that you have a complete sentence before it. What are imperative sentences? Imperative sentences basically give you an order or a command. So if I have a sentence like this, go home now, I would also end this with a full stop. Now, full stops are also used in abbreviations. You might have seen that they're used in some, imagine you have the United Nations. So you would write that as the UN, and this would be the shorter version of the United Nations. Now, sometimes writers tend to omit the full stops in certain abbreviations which are now considered the full forms. For instance, we have Mr. and Mrs. So you have to be careful that when you look at certain terms, you have to understand whether they're commonly considered as a whole word or whether they're used as abbreviations such as the UN. So if I want to write WWF, I would write that with full stops to show that it is the abbreviation of the full form of the words. Now, we can also use the full stop at the end of indirect questions. Now, this is a little tricky. Whenever you have a statement which is talking about something that was asked, then you do not end that with a question mark because you're not directly asking a question. Let's take an example to understand what this means. She asked about the book, right? So here I know this is a question or an indirect question because I am using the word asked. But if I say asked about the book, she asked about the book becomes an indirect question and therefore it is considered a statement. And I will end that with a full stop. So remember, whenever you want to show that you have a complete statement and it is either in the declarative form, in the imperative form, or an indirect question, then you have to end that statement with a full stop. Not using full stops or missing out on the full stops can make reading extremely difficult, and the person who is reading what you wrote will not be able to understand where one sentence ends and the other one starts. So be careful with those dots.